Hey. Yama, g'day everyone. Welcome to the round table. Today on the round table we have Nace, Sharon, Malia, Donnie, Jules, Connie and Polly. G'day everyone, how yous going? Everyone answer at once. Yeah!
Yama.
Well, I hope you've all had a good week. Times are a little tough, but we're making it. So today's subject for the table is, what is the veil? Does it really exist? Where is it? What is it? Why is it? Why is it necessary? What do we got? Why can some see the veil and some can't? Is the veil been torn, or is it thinning on its own accord? And why in history have some always tried to break through the veil from both sides? So they're just a few questions that I come up with. I'd like to hear some of yours and some answers to these questions that I've provided. And here we go. Who wants to go first? We'll get straight into it today, like I always do. Everyone's quiet. Well, I'll start. Does it really exist? We'll start with that, the veil. Hey, we've seen many pictures in history about the veil. They don't really tell you exactly what it is. They just tell you that it exists. But does it really? Because some people don't believe in it. And how would we recognise it? Like, we can feel it. For those that can see through it, we know it does exist. But some say it's just the edge of the world. Like, there's an old photo where this guy is crawling to the edge of the world and he sticks his head through the veil and he sees all these wheels on the other side. I can't remember what painting it is, but it exists. And I looked at that painting and I thought, well, that's a different version of the veil. That's more of a material, realistic version of the veil in conjunction to the spiritual version of the veil, where the spirits live on the other side. So I noticed that this morning and I thought, maybe there's more to this veil thing than what we think. Maybe there is a physical and a spiritual version of the veil. So what do you fellas think? Don't all speak at once.
Well, I definitely feel like there's a veil.
You can feel the veil. Hunch. What about you,
I
Sharon?
mean, I wonder if those who can't see it, if there's another sense that we use to feel it or know it's there.
I think when people have an experience with a spirit or something, they might consider thinking about the veil when it just appears from nowhere. It's been around for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, and the things that are behind the veil.
Behind the veil, yeah. And what?
Cryptids, Bigfoot, unicorns.
And there could be more substance to the veil, because we got some things in the chat room here, the truth veil. And
Yes.
I wanted to get that once we kind of discuss what the veil is, that is it made of these things? Is it made of truth and honesty and all them love and all them beautiful things that we know? Is that the substance of the veil? Is that why it's falling? Because we're lacking in those things? I've never actually discussed this with anybody, so this is the first time for me.
Spiritually, I would say yes. But in cosmic debris, in terms of atmosphere and everything that's going on, I think, and I'm speaking for myself, I think that the veil is thinning because it's got to do with the magnetics around the Earth weakening.
Okay, so that would more tend that the veil is an actual physical, energetic thing that's been affected, more than a spiritual thing that you can only see with your third eye.
I mean, but that leads me to think that's two kinds of a veil. You have that physical one that is occurring geometrically around our Earth, and the other one, the spiritual veil. And then there's the truth veil. I mean, I just think that the original veil, I imagine hiding somebody's face. hidden behind the veil. I think the veil was meant to hide something.
The veil was
Yeah,
meant to.
No, I'm sorry, Linda. Go ahead.
Oh, it was just
finish.
interesting what she said. The veil was meant to hide something. I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sharon, keep going.
Which kind of makes me wonder who created the veil. Did we have access to it a long time ago? And now we've had to earn our right to access it? Is it being altered through time and through the manipulation of time? I'm convinced, especially with the Mandela events, that we are at the effect of a lot of manipulation going on right now. And so I think that the veil is changing, and maybe even as much as we're seeing the outpicturing of how things are falling out, as it were. And I was, one of the first things I thought about was Wizard of Oz, right? Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain. Well, up until that very second in the movie, everybody was afraid of the Wizard of Oz, and yet it was just a person behind the curtain. Well, once they learned that, they were free, right? I mean, they were angry they had been manipulated because everyone had been manipulated, and they had always had somebody pretending to be the wizard. That was always how the game was played. And I think that there is games afoot. I think that we're starting to see some of the games. I think they're creating new games, but I think that there is a time element in this somehow. So I think things are, maybe even illusions are being moved while we're walking
Yes.
through them.
Good evening, everyone.
Good
Hey,
evening,
Polly.
Polly.
Good evening, Polly.
I wanted to start out by saying that I think we're all born without any veil at all. And the moment that we take our first breath or have our first interaction with the universe, these, I'll call them filters for lack of a better word, they get placed over our awareness or vision, whatever you want to call it, consciousness, until eventually you have so many filters that it does in fact veil things. But as far as what the veil is, I've never actually like, it sounds to me like y'all are speaking about something very specific, something that is like static. Like it's not because for me, I think that you could use the slide rule as an analogy for where people's veils actually are, and the slide rule would measure awareness of what's being done to you, like from an outside source, what's manipulating you. So you can move that veil backwards and forwards along this slide rule based on what your awareness is or what you're willing to entertain in your mind.
Interesting. Well,
Yeah, I think the veil is many things. I think it can be spiritual. It can just be our ignorance and in other words, we see when we're ready to see. And so we maybe have our own veils that we work on lifting
Yeah.
when we're ready, right? So my veils are different than Jules or Connie or anybody else.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
So everybody would have their own set of, I guess you could call it like proverbial clothing made out of veils that they walk around in, and they're all kind of see-through. But the less veils that you wear, the more that you can see, the clearer the picture becomes, I guess. So there's people walking around like completely blindfolded.
Right.
They just look what's on TV and read the newspaper, and that to me is like being extremely veiled. So I don't know. To me, I guess the veil is kind of like this point on a line that can be like one extreme or the other. You can be completely enlightened, but you in a way you could still be veiled to everybody around you because they're just not going to see it.
So I just have one question. Did anybody talk about just basically the veil is an obstruction of some kind, a boundary of some kind you can't see clearly through unless you go beyond this veil, whatever that you perceive that veil to be.
Why is the veil
I'd say the one
necessary?
good thing about having like veils is that they don't change the nature of what's behind them. So they're kind of benign in a way to me, because if there's a veil there or not, whatever's behind the veil is going to exist either way.
Uh-huh.
Gee, this is more than what I thought. As usual, every week I present
So-
something that's deep.
I sorrow.
Go, Nacy.
So, getting caught in semantics, the veil is in the eye of the beholder, where we differentiate between things, whether it be metaphorically like a window or material, or if we break it down into electromagnetics, it becomes fields or the ethos. And that line of demarcation between those levels, those dimensions, those illusions of spectrum from our own perspective, because each individual's veil may not be witnessed by another individual unless it is pointed out, whether it be the line or the gray between the white and the black, or the neutrality between positive and negative, where it's like, okay, where do we have the patience or the tolerance between the argument of Pepsi and Coke, or genderizing, or sexuality, or boundaries between states of being, your residence, or a state of being in emotions, spiritually and mentally. Like we were talking about the blood-brain barrier, where you break that veil, the soft part in the roof of your mouth or up in your nasal cavity. But then once it's distinguished, then the group can collectively look at that barrier, for lack of a better term, because I think many different semantics could be caused for the label of the veil. So when we describe or prescribe our veil to other people, if we can't agree that, oh yeah, I see that distinction between one thing and the other, then hopefully we can move forward in diminishing that veil being a positive thing or a negative thing or neutrally. That's it. My 0.03 cents.
I came to a thought about, because I was going to ask, does anybody have an example where a veil would be sort of an advantage or something positive? And for some reason, I went back to my early childhood when I was learning how to ride a bike, okay? And most people that learn how to ride a bike, at least from my generation, had training wheels. And when you were going to take the training wheels off, you were kind of terrified because you thought you were going to fall. So what your parents would do is they would run behind you holding the bike seat so that you had this sort of veil of security, and they would let go without you knowing about it, and you would think that they were holding on to the back of your bike when in fact you're actually riding the bike by yourself. And so if your parent shouts out, no, you're doing that all by yourself, I'm not holding the bike anymore, a lot of times the kid falls down, including myself. But if they don't say anything and you have that veil, it's kind of disguising the truth, I guess, which is that you are doing it on your own and there's nobody holding on to the back seat. Um, the lifting of that veil can only be done by the child riding the bike in order for it to work and stick. So, in a way, that's kind of a good way that a veil can be used.
Do you think that's what Creator did to us?
Maybe, I don't know. We're just children after all.
Exactly, that's what I was thinking. Donnie said earlier, how will we lift the veil? Sometimes in that instance, I don't think the veil needs lifting because the kid needs to feel that feeling of security, even though we all know it was them peddling by themselves.
So
It
some
would
veils
depend on what's on the other side of the veil.
individual.
True. Well, what is on the other side of the veil? That's another question. And it depends what veil we're talking about. As I've listened to you all talking, there's more than one veil. As with anything in our life, there's all this on-flowing stuff. So we can say the veil, but it actually applies to all different things, as I've learned listening to you fellas.
Yeah.
So behind
I
the
think
veil,
what's on the other side of the veil is you.
It's true. I think that with the personal veil, definitely you're on the other side.
and what do we veil from ourselves? And as the veil lifts and we see ourselves more, we can go through a bit of stuff doing that.
With
Yeah.
rose-colored glasses, you can't see the blood.
That's true. I actually have a pair of rose-coloured glasses, and I went to a shop to order food one day, and I looked up behind the counter at the list of food they had, and I went, why is it blank? And then I removed my glasses and realised it was all written in red.
So if there's a veil that's close to a portal, Bigfoot could possibly be behind that veil. Unicorns, I mean, I would think that there's a veil, they're protected behind that veil because humans, we don't play well with ourselves, let alone we would decimate unicorns and Bigfoot. We're too savage for them as a species. So I think the veil protects them as well as us.
So in that context, is the veil a vibration?
Well, this goes back to electromagnetivity, which everything is. Then it comes to fields. If we look at it from the perspective of the atmosphere and then the stratosphere and then the troposphere, it's layers. If we look at frequencies, 3 megahertz, 4 megahertz, 5 megahertz, it's different levels. Just like on a radio dial, so are the veils. And whether or not we can, through our oogly googlies, seeing a visual color spectrum, that in itself would be layers of the veil and being able to witness it, or like that distinction of feeling, between love and fear. That in itself could be a veil. But definitely the man behind the curtain would be the banksters.
Yep.
From the viewpoint of trauma, the veil is something almost inbuilt our brain that protects us from too much at once, and it puts up barriers or veils. And then as you are processing the trauma, then somebody that's been there with you through something will just bring up a few words, and all of a sudden the full memory is right there of that occurrence. Although at the time it happened, your brain just didn't even process it. On some level, it did, but not in my consciousness. So, a lot of things, I think, especially with trauma, that's why some people remember years and years later, and it almost seems fake because all it takes is a certain scent or a sound, and all of a sudden these clips of memories start to occur. So that's just, sorry, I went down a bit of a rabbit trail, but I think it's God's built in protection. And when we're ready, we begin to process.
And some veils will develop over time. In an example of a woman having a child, that their body will actually produce I can't remember what it's called, but something that will have you basically forget the pain of going through childbirth. And so I understand that, where like some people will even like develop like an amnesia from trauma, because the whole of the trauma could potentially circuit the mechanism of thinking properly. And this goes back with the electromagnetic thing. Is it not interesting enough that the veil that the cell phones crossed is the lowest end of cell phones in the frequency that they utilize is an overlap of the highest frequency that the brain resonates at. Why did they decide to break that veil?
Looking at Donnie's quote, we all agree that it's a good quote. Elders quote, "I can walk the line, other side of the curtain, so can you."
Has anybody got a Hadron Collider to
Me,
open some veils?
Not quite. I'm just looking for a portal that goes somewhere.
I still have a little bit of like, wait a minute, I didn't never forget the labor. I remember that pain. Like, that shit hurt. You don't forget it. But I guess in maybe like 20 years or it'll wait.
No, I was going to I remember the pain, and it's been a few years now, but I remember it.
Oh, good. It stays stuck, I'm pretty sure.
Maybe some people don't remember because they took drugs.
Yeah, right? No, I love what Connie said there, right? And I just kind of want to add to that a little bit. My thoughts, quick. And they're being a very spiritual person or all of these other things to describe myself, but basically what I've come to understand myself is there's not much of a veil, say, for me. And I was just kind of, what I've learned about researching like what this is and why I can see what other people see is that it does have something to do with the eyes. And it's almost as if we were born with a veil, a thin membrane that covers over the top of our eye. And in ancient texts and biblical references, we can even look at some of that, because it does prove that in some ways. In some ways not. But one of the things we can look at in references of the veil, I think, is that it has to do with the eyes, and that that scales have been put on our eyes from birth. And so for some of like, let's talk about Zachariah or some of the other ones that have reported UFO sightings, or dealt with this kind of a strange phenomenon that really, I think, biblical text proves our ancient alien ancestry, but that's a whole nother rabbit trail, you might imagine. But at the bottom line, when it comes to the veil, it talks about these serpent-like scales being placed over man's eyes. And the more that we feed the 7 evil serpents or the 7 evil egos, gluttony, greed, on and on, right? And the less that we give to the virtues, the 7 virtues, then the more those scales develop over our eyes. And the less we're able to see into the spiritual realm, or that what I've come to understand it as that kind of in between place is the veil itself, like the astral place where all the stars and light kind of objects are, and you can kind of float around forever in there. A lot of people get stuck in that instead of crossing over to the other side of the veil. So in the astral plane, it's like I said, it's this in between place, and it seems like the actual veil itself is right there, and it's pretty much the same as when we look up at the sky at night and it's dark and we see the stars. Same up there. So the more in several different types of ancient texts, and I keep referring to this because it seems like ancient texts, me at least, gives me the solidity of like a rock solid proof that, okay, these cultures had it right, these cultures had it right, these had it right for hundreds of years, and we've forgotten everything, literally. And we've devolved, not evolved, over the past 6,000 years. Ancient technology was way more advanced than what we have today, in my opinion. And but to kind of come to a conclusion here on what my thoughts of what the veil is, it is able to, like what Polly started with, it is able to grow your spirit to such a point where you become more sensitive, and those scales become more removed from your eyes, and you're able to see more of the spiritual. So you get more reports of people who see angels and this kind of stuff being virtuous or pure, or this kind of idea of understanding close to nature. And on the other side, the mockers, or those who want to throw stones at these type of people, are those who tend to be gluttonous, greedy, full of lustful spirits and these kinds of things, making them less sensitive to that realm, making it so that they can deny it. So they don't have to face that reality. Okay, I'm finished.
Yeah, true. If you didn't know veils existed, none of this would really matter. You just keep walking forward.
Yeah.
I presume there are people out there like that, because we have one of everything in this world. For me, that's a bit scary, not being able, because I've been able to see different veils all my life, and not to see them all of a sudden would freak me out.
Yeah.
But so we never really talked about why people want to tear these veils, right? Even we've established there's veils of the mind, and there's veils, emotional veils, and there's spiritual veils. We can understand why the mind and emotional veils perhaps could need tearing down, because we need to grow. No matter what it is, we need to grow. But the spiritual veil, obviously, it was put there for a reason. Why do things want to always tear it down? They want to access, like, what good would it do anyone? Personally, I don't really understand, because the veil's thin to me anyway. I can see through it, but for other people, I don't know their motivations for tearing the veil down. It actually could be quite detrimental to people if they're not ready to see what's on the other side of the veil.
Well, one of the things that I think of along with the whole veil is when a child is born, and when a woman, her water breaks, the embryonic sac, it's like an egg yolk, more or less, and when it breaks, the water breaks, but then there are occurrences when the sac will go over the infant's face, and it will give them the impression of being born with a veil. And some people would look at this as a heavenly sign, or there's something special about this child because they were born with this veil, which is just basically the sac that we're being incubated in, and then that will follow them through their life. And I'm trying to remember, I think there was a saint, and I'm not remembering who it was, that was one of their criteria of sainthood or something like that they were born with that veil, as a child. But when we think of that ultimate question that Lunar proposed about why do we need to break that veil, and one thing that I can think of in my own experience is that, when I joined the military and originally got out of the military, I was a goose-stepping American, and I was totally marching to the beat of the grand machinacea of this country and what they wanted to create. Good little Americans. So they create good little Americans. But then that veil was shattered, in my experience, after getting sick and then finding out that as a veteran, we're intentionally being used as experimental guinea pigs. So that veil was definitely a shattering. And I would say the first shattering of the veil we all experience is that day we learned that there is no Santa Claus.
I would say that some of the reason why some people have an urge to rip through these veils is because they realize they no longer require their protection.
Interesting. Come on, Sharon.
Really
Yeah,
good point.
I was just going to say, I really like that, Polly. And if I go back to the Wizard of Oz, I think in our lives, sometimes we break through the veil when we no longer need it. Like, they didn't need the wizard. I mean, that's one of the lessons of that movie, right? That they didn't need the wizard to get rid of the witch. And he didn't even get Dorothy out of there. She could have done it all by herself all along, but that was the big lesson. She had to learn she didn't need the wizard, and they didn't need the brain from the wizard. They didn't need the heart. They already had all those things within them. I wonder if sometimes we start tripping over our own dark side, and then we have to start seeing things, right? And start, because otherwise we're just going to keep tripping over it. And so you were bringing up earlier, Polly, is there a good reason for it? Sometimes I think it is a protection for us, like you said, and then we have it there to protect us for as long as we do, and then I think we have to grow up and then take on the responsibility of, okay, I can see this for what it is now. I'll take the responsibility.
Well,
And you
it's,
would
it's
probably
like,
also pass that veil down to the younger generation as well, so that it provides the same service.
Right.
well, it's like Connie was talking about earlier, with trauma. There's strong evidence that in the full spectrum of what we witness through our oogly googlies, less than 20% of it is diagnosed and collected as data and regurgitated in your brain, where 80% of it is just put there in the back storage because allegedly we can't handle seeing the full spectrum of the potential. Like a cat will sometimes be looking at something. Well, a cat sees a different visual color spectrum than we do. So that could be potentially the veils, like Luna's saying, where she's gifted in seeing whether, the entities be of ghost nature or, other entities, but it goes back to that whole um, denotating the perspective, like for an example of Luna, seeing some of her ancestors, that veil for her was passed or it dissolved or it was taken down or ripped open or, different reasons, but now she has that ability, and maybe she runs across a handful of people in her lifetime where all of a sudden it's like, oh, you see that too? I thought I was the only one.
True that, Naysay, what you said is true. And actually, I've never thought about whether the veil was there. I've looked back to see whether it was there before or whether they never ever gave me one.
Well, here's a thought. Can somebody's let's say disgust or hatred be veiled in kindness? Isn't that a beneficial way to use a veil?
Yeah, I've seen that in people too, Polly. I've seen.
We call that Minnesota nice.
Yeah, exactly.
Or in your face, they're just like, oh, how sweet of you, but
Kill them with kindness.
Not in your presence. They're just talking.
You see a lot of them in business and that because they'll be nice to you because you got something they want.
It's only business.
And once they get it, you see through the veil and you realise, shit, you were doing that the whole time just to get what you wanted from me, and now you're gone.
The Jungle Book. Trust in me, just in me.
Yeah. While I hypnotise you and take what I want.
Exactly.
But I've seen people, I call it, they like shiny things, like they're very easily distracted. And it's like, oh, that's so pretty and shiny. And I've seen them people get taken advantage of all the time by the nice, so-called nice people. And I've pulled them aside and gone, look, I know that they're nice, but please look beyond that and have a really good look beyond the shiny, sparkly stuff, And
So I have a question that hasn't been brought up yet, and that is, what is a veil made of? Because it seems to me that it can be made of almost any human emotion whatsoever, which means that it's a very vague concept in itself. So I don't think any way to like really quantify what an actual veil is or the veil is per se.
Well, a window could be considered a veil. Sunglasses could be considered a veil. Even a wall, could be a veil, whether it's physical, mental, emotionally, or spiritual. But then it comes back to that, of the parties participating in the conversation of the veil to distinguish, where is that veil between us? Or, are we inside looking out? Or are we outside looking in? Or are we just blinded by each other's brilliance?
There's a curtain that divides the stage from the audience, and the veil is the curtain. So you could be part of the audience or you could be part of the show. It's up to you.
Here I am
Yeah, I like that
on the
one.
road again. Here I am up on the stage.
And what happens if you don't want to be part of the show or part of the audience, and you might be backstage or something?
I'm going to take my things and leave.
Then you're the one that gets to lift the veil.
Yeah, true that, eh? You're the curtain puller.
Open sesame seeds.
Isn't that your choice though, Luna? I mean, it's your choice to participate or not?
Yep.
I mean, it's a harder choice if you're awake to just zone out.
Yeah, because you're
You can
aware
do
of the options. And some people may not be aware of the options and they've always been in the audience, and one day someone might make them aware that, hey, you can be up on the stage if you want, and they go, what? Or you can go backstage and be a stagehand. Or you can be a ticket person at the front door. Like these other things you can be, but some people don't know that. I presume that it's the knowledge for this isn't abundant because it's one of those things where if everyone knew or would take the thing out of it, there must be something behind the veil. See, there must be a trick there. There must be some kind of little trick somewhere where...
Or the ability to go back and forth and through
Yeah.
and beyond.
Yeah, there's
Break
something
on
there.
through to the other side. Reminds me of just then a tiny little dot got caught in my eye, but I watched it way too long at the Pink Floyd midnight movie when all of a sudden I was in the movie, part of the movie, but my perspective changed just from that tiny little dot got caught my eye. A little tiny micro dot got caught my eye.
I know which one you're talking about, Nancy. All right, where were we about?
But that breaks veils.
Yes,
Hallucinogenics.
true. Yes, it does.
That punctures through a lot of veils.
Well, we all know traditional cultures all had some sort of ceremony and drug to take people through to show them the veil and say, look, here's the veil, there's another side, whether it be, well, it's actually mental, emotionally, it's all, I think it's all, when you realise there's veils, I think you realise there's veils and everything. But traditionally, every mob had something to show you and break you through to the other side and show you more about life. So,
Well, if you rearrange the letters in the word veil, you get live or live.
cool.
Or evil.
Evils.
Or evil.
Evils, yeah. Evil, yeah.
Womp, womp, womp.
Wow.
Well, there has to be a good and an evil in everything.
Yeah, that's
because
right.
that's the law.
It has to be made up of all this
Well, you know,
Or vile. There's vile. If we're gonna play, we should play Scrabble.
Kev's not here.
Well, you know, the other thing that it makes me think of also, if we go back to the Big Bang, you know, where our mothers and fathers, you know, made mad, passionate love to each other, and from that confusion, where the spermola, you know, penetrates the egg, you know, when it breaks that veil, ironically enough, the minute it breaks that veil into the egg, the tail snaps off, and the secretion from that tail breaking off hits the outer membrane of the egg, and it instantly hardens, so no other sperm can break through. And then that little sphere of the sperm migrates to the center of that egg, where all of a sudden there's a spark, an explosion, microcosm, macrocosm. And then when that explosion occurs, those two like nuclei, they spread apart, and then all of a sudden that original pathway from the edge of the egg to the center splits the egg into like a torus or like a donut. And then that torus stretches and then bloop, cell division. And the mitosis begins. And then that occurrence happens over and over again, where the edge of the cell meets the nuclei, a torus is created, and then bloop, cell division. And then we become this trillion particulates of cells, to be Sharon, to be Polly, to be Connie, to be Jules, to be Luna, to be Donnie. And so that constant occurrence of the veil being popped is constantly happen in the microcosm of the machinations of the body occurring in the consistence of mitosis. So is it inherently within us to break the veil?
I don't know about that, but after listening to your description of birth, I'd rather be a seed and just pop out and go, ta-da, here I am. I was visualising all that.
Pomegranate.
Yeah, just be a seed, put me in the dirt and bang, I'm there. Yeah, I think progressively we're supposed to go through veils. It's a gentle way of learning, I think. Just pass through the veils until you get no more, I suppose. And you're in a big open field. I've got to say something though, talking about veils. When I've had people ask me where their loved one is when they pass over, right? They come to me to see if they're okay. And I call to see them. I'll describe what I see. This would happen. All right, so someone comes to me and says, so-and-so's passed away and I want to know if they're okay. And I'll say, okay, we'll see what they're doing. And virtually what I do is say, hey, I get their name and I go, can somebody go and locate so-and-so for me? And then I watch these beings go through spirit world and actually locate these other spirits. But while I'm watching, I see where they are, and they can be in all variety of places. But there's one place in particular that I've found, and the walls are like veils, right? It's like white walls, but the walls aren't solid. It actually looks like a ton of veils. This room looks like a 4-sided room of veils, but it's actually a room. And this particular room is a waiting room, and it's reserved for people that commit suicide, people that die murdered and it's like an uncalculated death. It was because someone put their energy over them and it was sudden, or whether there was non-proper things happen when they died, right? It's suspicious. And they wait in this room, and somehow they've got to wait there until whoever in spirit world sorts it out. And once they've sorted out, then they move on to their next station. But this particular room is made of veils, and I've never actually put it together with what we're talking about till this moment. The room of veils. It's like a waiting room after you pass from here before you go where you're supposed to go. I just want to chuck that in.
Did you get a sense of how long? A quick question. So, if I was in the room, did you get a sense that I have any control of that? Is it up to me to clear it up? Do I have any power, or am I literally just waiting there?
Is there good magazines, or a TV plan, or a radio?
No, the room's empty actually.
Put my phone in.
And get tea and coffee while you're waiting. Actually, it feels like...
Take a number.
Kind of like that. I do call it the big office upstairs, for that reason.
No surveying, number 7.
Well,
sometimes all you need to move a veil is a cool breeze.
Yeah, well, that's...
So what did you experience, Luna?
Well, what Polly said, it does move. It was like a breeze in there. That's how I realised one day the walls are like veils, material veils. because it moved like a breeze. So they're in there, and it seems like a two-part thing. They talk to the being in there about what happened to them, and if they've been murdered or something, they're obviously in a bit of shock, so they wait for that. It's a two-part thing, and it's part of it is that person realising stuff, and they need information to where to put them next because of the circumstances. The time factor is different. We all know the time factor between reality and spirit world is different. One particular lady that I saw, she had a car accident, and it wasn't her fault, but they wrote on the paper it was, and she was in this room. She was in there for 8 months in our time. And I don't know what it wouldn't have been very long for her in spirit world, I presume. I don't know, but 8 months in our time is a long time, and the discrepancy in our world was the car T-boned her, but they wrote down that she was it was her fault, and it wasn't her fault. It was the car that T-boned her. So there was a discrepancy there in the honesty of her actual death, and she went to this room, and it was her sister that asked me to look for her. She was in there for 8 months. Don't ask me. I don't know why it takes so long in our realm. I suppose it depends on the other person's spirit. There's a lot of factors that we couldn't even imagine, you know, when you start to think about it.
There's a lot. Yes, like I'm nodding my head the whole time you're talking, Lou.
Cool.
And yeah, that's exactly it. And it's like a long line. Great.
Yeah.
You have no idea.
And looking at the vote.
And, well, not you, Luna, but I'm just saying in general, most people don't. How many people really enter into the.
You're cutting out, Malia.
Go ahead.
Yeah, you keep breaking up, sweetie, that's all.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just looking at the room that they're in now. It is, to me, it looks like white veils. So if you can imagine a square white room, but the walls are white veils, and if you put your hand through it, it would feel like heaps of white scarves.
And you know what would happen in a room like that? If you took a wrong step and you stepped on one of those veils, it would come ripping down before you were ready to actually see through it.
Yeah. Well, there's lots of them, right? There's lots and lots and lots of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think when I'm looking at it now, it's kind of the veils of that person's veils of their life. I'm not sure. I need to look into it more because I've never really discussed this with anyone either.
Well, sometimes taking a bad step is good because it rips down one of those veils.
Yeah.
Clarence, I want to live again. I want to live again. Zuzu petals.
Yeah. See, Nisse's on a good little track right there, because some spirits do advance like that. They got wheels and they are straight ahead to the front of the line because they have less veils in their life that they've dealt with.
Christmas, you old
right?
savings and loans.
Don't talk to me about Christmas. Oh, don't even start, please, Nessie.
It's a Wonderful Life.
Actually, does not like Christmas.
Well,
Okay,
sometimes you
sorry.
could even be pushed into a veil that you had no intention of even interacting with, and somebody just pushed you that way, and you fell onto it, and it fell down from the ceiling. and now
Well,
it's
you're
not
talking
coming up.
about in yes, I agree, Polly,
Right, in the
to
wrong
some
room.
degrees. However, you're talking about while still living, able to impact those veils. Once you're dead, you have to pass through them. If you don't pass through them, you stand waiting in the line until you're ready to take another step forward.
Same
Period.
thing with when you're alive.
Yeah, so it's up to you. You can run right through and like have that direction and guidance and understanding. Exactly, Polly. Same thing when you're alive. True, to a degree. But once you're
Not
dead,
waiting on a lady.
you can no longer affect those veils anymore. You can't have any kind of effect into this physical living realm. I mean, that's the importance of doing something with your life while you have it for right now, because you're either going to advance in that spiritual realm or you're going to stand there and wait, because what did I do? I drugged out my brain all my life and drank drugs and alcohol and wasted it and didn't learn anything or advance spiritually, then yeah, those are the ones that I see standing in that line just going, I don't want to look at the next spot, and it's up to them. Just like here, we have choice.
So then if everybody took a moment and just closed their eyes and kept them closed, did you not just close a veil?
Yeah, that's why it has to do with the eyes. Exactly. I think the eyes are very closely linked
Overrated.
to the veil.
Cats have got
Not
double eyelids.
overrated. You know that without your eyes, you wouldn't see your spirit so well.
My
And they
cat,
say being blind, I think you do have you have to fit into that category
yeah,
of
definitely.
I
having
didn't think I'd see better once I
the
lost my
addicted,
sight.
and you have proved it over and over again. You've proved in your spirit that you have a little bit of foresight.
I'm in the spirit world.
Well, yeah,
So,
you're
are you
sentient.
saying
So
that? Sorry, are you
go
saying
ahead.
that veils are intrinsically dependent on someone's ability to actually physically see with eyeballs?
No, absolutely not. I'm saying quite the opposite. That the person who is blind is more apt to cross the spiritual realm and not have a veil, like just not even have a veil in the spiritual realm. They see it all. They're able to transcend and move into it. Blind is most of,
There can be veiled
not
thought.
all, most of them are this way that I've encountered. I've encountered some really, really, really dumb blind people. I'm sorry, but it's true. And
That's not what I was getting at.
but no.
What I was trying to suggest is that there can be veiled things that have nothing to do with the actual senses themselves. They're more tied to like just independent thought, which is like a frequency that exists whether you want to think about it or not.
Well,
When
I
you
think
think about it, you're
that
lifting that
begins.
veil, or you're tuning into that one frequency that, and now it's unveiled. That thought becomes clear. It's unveiled. It's revealed.
Is
Revealed
that
and
an
unveiled
epiphany?
are very similar in the phonetics and spelling.
Right, and that can give us clues as to like the truth of what we're looking at or trying to get to, but we have to begin at some place somewhere in agreement. And I think that in some ways what you're proposing is a somewhat ethereal, or which the veil is very ethereal, so it's not hard to get to this place, but there still has to be somewhat of a solidity of, okay, well, we need a clear definition. I'm a Libra, I'm that way.
GPS.
Oh my gosh, I've got to have that really solid, clear, okay, where is A? Where is starting point?
You need
And
to
then I can
remove that
build
veil.
something. And yeah,
I'm
I agree,
gonna
Polly. I agree. But at the same time, it has to have rules. It has to have boundaries in a sense. And in this place, there are much boundaries. Go ahead, Jules. Sorry. Go
No, I
ahead.
was
All
gonna
veils.
say, man, I'm behind the Aquarius veil. I mean, that's I think a personal veil. What me as an Aquarian and others that are Aquarians, we're gonna see things a little different.
Veils are boundaries that can be easily removed if you want.
Labels. They're all labels. Take them if you must.
Darn it, I don't know. Veils are they're a difficult topic because it's a difficult English word to begin with. Like we were saying before, you can already unpackage it rather quickly and have its etymology that it stems from evil, and it stems into
Yeah.
vile and the other
the
And veils
terms.
can also be lures.
Right? What? Yeah. So I'm willing to go there and discuss that. But I wanted to bring up too a question really quick. Do you guys think that fluoride and calcium and these kinds of things affect the spirit's ability to enter into the spiritual realm or cross the veil?
Any disruption in the optimal performance of the brain can cause an effect.
Are you talking after they die? Because we don't take our
No,
body with
I'm
us when
talking
we
just
die.
in general of in the spirit realm. Do you think that in our life, is it a good thing? No, but if we're wanting to cross the veil or experience what's on the other side of that veil before we die, which would
Was
be
that
essentially
stopping
remote
us?
viewing,
Right.
right? Are these kinds of things a good thing to? I just wanted to know and kind of be aware of and get your guys' opinion. Does this affect one's ability to cross over?
I think it
There's
does.
many heavy metals that will cause damage to the brain optimally functioning. Fluoride in itself has been proven to calcify the pineal gland.
Yeah.
So I would
Bothersome.
utilize chelation to get rid of heavy metals out of the body.
If the veil was a river, you best not pay the ferryman until you get to the other side.
True.
And plantain tincture can help too.
But you can pay me $19.99 and I'll ferry you somewhere.
I want to address something what Sharon said before about the spirit people being like on the other side of the river. I've noticed something really interesting in the last couple of years. I don't know, the last 5 to 7 years maybe. Every time, not up until that point, when a spirit wanted to come to say a message, they were allowed to leave, and they had like a bit of a time gap where they were allowed to come and deliver the message, and they had to go back. What I've noticed in the last years is that they have to come with an escort now. And all the spirits I've seen do not come alone. There is this silent escort standing with them. It's like maybe the spirit police.
It's like the Jehovah Witnesses, they come in pairs.
No, sometimes I've seen one being come to talk to me and it had 2 bodyguards on each side. I had a friend who'd passed away a long time ago who visited me regularly, and all of a sudden when they came they had an escort. And I realised that something's gone on upstairs where any beings that want to come visit, there's this escort there, or 2 escorts. It depends who they are and how many escorts they have. But this is only a new thing. It's very different to what's normally happened. And perhaps, given what's happening in the world, that's the reason for the escorts. I don't ask too many questions. I just do what I'm told. I'm a good person that way when it comes to upstairs.
You're a lackey to the upstairs man.
Yeah, no, I do ask questions, but there's times where I don't. I know when and when not to ask questions. It's like sitting down with all the black fellas who don't ask questions. Sorry.
I wanted to confirm what you just said, Luna, because Elena Friedman had an interesting interview with Dark Journalist just last night. She said one of her big concerns is that the powers that be, or should not be, are going to play games with those of us when we leave here. Are our souls going to get caught? They're going to catch our souls and not allow us to leave, and prevent us from doing reincarnation, because, as she said, it's not good enough they control everything over here. They want to control everything everywhere, right? And that's where we get into a little girl that gets caught up in the upside down world, which I think is a part of all this. I know when I was interpreting for my friend, talking to somebody on the other side, the angels were right there with the person. They never left the person's side.
Yep.
And made sure that they were there, and then they escorted them back over.
Exactly what I've been seeing, yep.
Yeah, Luna, I'm seeing it too, and it was really interesting, and I don't know if it was because it was for our protection or that it would get caught, and maybe it's to protect us from getting lost from the powers that be. You know, the little games they're playing.
I kind of think it's
a
double.
Talked a lot about. Let me just finish this one last sentence. So, Alana talked a lot about her biggest nightmare is getting caught up in this net, and I have to say it's something that I have also worried about how much control do they have? Can they catch our souls now?
Well, if we look at the Christian perspective, from what I recall, being raised Lutheran, there was this battle for our souls that I was taught in Christianity, that Satan, the devil, was trying to get our souls, and Jesus was trying to get them up to heaven. And so if you think of that battle, going back to the whole energy, electromagnetic, positive, neutral, negative, the battle of the universe finding neutrality to balance out, if our essence, our power, our energy, our soul, our manatu, if it can be measured as a source of power, then absolutely there are going to be entities that are going to try to take that power, utilize that power for their own agenda.
Donnie said
Yeah, I
that.
kind of go back to that dream I had where the entity on the train led me back to the past and I didn't fight her. And that was a veil. In my opinion, I crossed over the veil into whatever reality I crossed over. And I didn't fight her. And I didn't even know it was an option. I didn't know what she was going to do. And so I'm wondering if we need to be very aware of this and figure out a way not to allow this to happen.
It's interesting to me that a veil can be made of something both that inhibits light or amplifies light to the point where you can't see. So a veil can be made of light where it's like just so bright that you can't see it, and you would need something to prevent that light from going into your eyes to see through that veil, or quite the opposite. You would need a flashlight to see through the veil of darkness. And it's interesting that veils can exist in both realms simultaneously to me. That's why I think that the term veil is one of those, it's almost like not really a word in itself. It's more of a plane, like a level of, I don't know if I want to say existence, because that's too vague, but I think y'all will understand what I'm trying to say here. I hope.
I feel like that's the sun and moon.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I can see, if you think of an atmosphere around them, it's a veil. I get you.
That's because you're an Aquarian.
That's very interesting. Other people are saying what I'm saying. That's a good thing. That makes it more real for me. Or what about, has anyone heard throughout their life that one day the veil will lift, and those people that don't understand it or know what's on the other side will start freaking out, and that it's up to those that know about it to assist those and inform them of what's happening, or shield them, perhaps protect them from it as they become aware of it?
Yes, I have heard that. And I wondered, are we supposed to try to explain all this to people? I mean, even if we try to explain what's happening right now, I
Yes.
don't know if they're going to be able to understand this. I think about all of that whole point of that it's supposed to be in our bailiwick to be able to explain this. You guys remember the movie They See, or that the one, right, where he puts the sunglasses on, right?
They live.
They live.
They
They
live.
live. Okay, I didn't remember this, but there was a scene in the movie where he's trying to get his friend to put on the sunglasses. They get into a big duke out, and finally the guy gives in and puts the sunglasses on. And he's like, "Oh, okay." And I'm always leery if this is our job.
You wouldn't hit a guy with glasses on, would you?
Exactly.
Never underestimate the power of ignorance, eyes that refuse to see and ears that refuse to hear. So at what moment do you say, all right, I planted a seed. How much are you going to nourish that seed? Because is it our duty, responsibility? I said duty to awaken somebody or to remove the veil? Is that not their own path to live?
I would say that, like, the seed analogy is good because planting the seed will eventually grow something that perhaps may inadvertently at least move the veil.
So,
Because I remember when in the 90s when my veil of conspiracies and whatnot got ripped apart, and I was like trying to tell everybody at nauseum, and people were just like, "Oh my God, you're such a conspiracy theorist," and they would just poo-poo it and everything. From like 96 to 98, I was just trying to scream from the mountaintops, and I've emailed the entire House of Representative and legislature, and trying to bring about awareness of Gulf War illness. And then finally, it got so overwhelming. I was like, "Screw it! I'm not squawking anymore." And then I
Yeah, man.
decided to focus on college and moved up to Moorhead to go to college. And then I was going to go to the reservation and be like, let the world eat itself.
I
You
find
know,
the more things you say ad nauseum, like just in general, the more things anyone would say ad nauseum is just going to make them nauseous eventually.
Yeah.
so, two things quickly. Yeah, I was told that the veil will lift one day and you've got to help people. What I think's going to happen there is they'll see what, basically, some of the things I see, and it will freak them out. They'll see people's energy, they'll see beings that they've never seen before walking around. They'll see lots of things, and it would freak an ordinary person out. The other thing I want to
I
say...
totally agree, but I think that helping is a way to remove veils from other people, or at least give them the ability to remove that veil, because some people's veils involve that everybody's just out for themselves and that there is no reason to accept help from anybody. And that is a veil, I think, that's been very cleverly, uh, almost inadvertently, put on most of society, where everybody thinks they have to do everything by themselves, that they're like self-sufficiency, all that, like, because of what's going on in the world around us, like we need to be more self-reliant and self-sufficient. And I think an advertent side effect of that is that it's almost like a detriment to ask for help. And that is a veil, I think, that needs to be shattered. Hopefully, it's not made of something that's like, fabric, so we can shatter it, because then we'll have to light it on fire, and then people are going to get burned. But that's a veil that people need to get rid of. Like, there's so many veils that have been put on us, especially they use the environment to their advantage. And by environment, I'm talking political, I'm talking environmental, and I'm talking obviously pandemic, which I guess would classify as environmental. But they're using all of these things to just put up more veils. It's like it's almost like a waterfall, but it's made of veils. And until someone can build one of those freaking... Yeah, exactly. Until someone can build an umbrella big enough for that huge of a waterfall, those veils are just going to keep falling over us.
I'd just like to take this point. Jocelyn, if you would like to tell your story, please just unmute. It's up to you. The other question I had...
Yeah, I'd love to hear the story, Jocelyn.
Yeah, we would. Come
Yeah.
on. By popular demand.
Oh, she can't talk, no voice.
Oh, okay then, no worries. Sorry, the listeners, you miss out on that. The next thing was, does anyone think that that machine CERN has anything to do with the veil tearing, lifting, dissolving, whatever way you want to put it? Do you think that their machine there?
Not anymore. Not anymore. Thank goodness.
Right.
Yeah. But
Right.
I think it was shut down since the weasel tore apart the wires. That thing hasn't worked right.
Yeah, that was a crash.
And that was in 2014. No, sorry, 2016.
Yeah.
2016.
But do you think it
If
had?
they're not using that one, they're using
and-
the other one.
I was saying
Yeah.
there's underclad
But does it
down.
tear the veil? No, it doesn't work that way anymore. It doesn't tear the veil. They can't push through anymore. I haven't seen it able to, anyways. They've tried. They've tried.
Disagree.
But I have not seen them able to open it. They have been able to push things through the portals in the sacred places. But as far as CERN, I've watched very closely spiritually over it, and I guess that's why I get a little because I know pretty well for sure they have not torn the veil as far as
But there are certain sites that aren't
that we
known.
don't tear that they want to tear really bad before the prophesied time of its sharing, which passed 20, in my opinion.
And what about time? What about manipulating time, manipulating things like that? Are you sensing that?
Yes, they've been doing that quite a bit
Right.
since at least 1954, Roswell. Very clearly, I believe, a time travel experiment to move people from one side of the earth to the other side of the earth and see if they could transport
And you had the Philadelphia
and end up in a big,
experience.
huge crash in the Philadelphia. And then we have the, stuff, the ones they didn't tell us about. But, like how many times did Discovery really go up? And how many times did...
Yeah, no, really.
Yeah, I'm
I
serious.
think-
I know how many times it went up, at least are on record. Yeah, and it was a lot more than they counted.
I get the
Actually-
feeling that they're able to do things over and over and over till they get the results they want. Right?
Yeah.
And so they'll do it, and then it's like, okay, well, this is good. This is the direction we wanted to go.
Yeah.
And then in the
Navy
meantime,
did. Air Force did. Heck yeah, they did.
right? And so then they do the next thing and the next thing, and they certainly are able to look into the future as the future comes towards them. It's like, oh yeah, that had the effect we wanted.
Yeah, mirroring, scrying has been happening at least since the 1700s. At least. I
Right.
think there's record in the 1500. I think it goes even back
Right.
to when they changed the calendar. And that's what the whole calendar change in Council of Nicaea was really all about.
Yeah.
I think
making
Neil
that big
Armstrong may
decision.
have said something about the veil of truth being lifted in one of his last live speeches ever. But don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it was along those same lines. Like, he used the word veil and he used the word truth in the same sentence. I'm
So did
95% sure.
Nathan, I almost called you Nancy Polly. I'm sorry. So did Polly. So did Joseph Smith. So did Alistair. So did, whatever leader you want to put up there. They all said that in their big, huge, even Martin Luther. They've all gone through that. Yeah, go ahead. You triggered me, Polly.
Even with the measurement of the ruler, will they only give us 1 inch when they have all 12 inches of data? And they will they only will give us a little increment at a time, because then they can stay in the future profiting, because we have limited data to what is there, especially now with technological programs running on such high speed algorithms. Their predictions can be even more spot on because of the overabundance of data that's been collected. And so when the veil of truth as they may call it, is based upon them having the whole measurement of rule compared to the little scraps of data we get.
The veil of truth.
Yeah, and I think it. Oh, I was going to say, if we look at that that TV show that everybody loved, the one with the lady, what's his face, Walter, the guy that did all those things over and over, all of the inventions and stuff, who was totally annoying. I can't remember the name of the show right now, but there were so many truth bombs in that movie, in that TV show, right? Where all of these things that were going on, and especially I think there's a lot of time travel and stuff. I just get the feeling that they know what we're going to do. They have so many technological advances, like you said, Nate, they know all kinds of things that we don't know, And yeah, quantum leap is one of them. But no, the other one was I don't know. Sorry, I'm
Stargate.
blanking on it.
Stargate SG1.
There's yeah, like Stargate. That's
Yeah.
another one of them. Yeah, absolutely. And then the secret space thing, right, and all that kind of stuff. So my point is,
Right.
I have believed that they've had time travel and time manipulation technology for a very, very long time, as long as I've been here.
So
That is their home court advantage for them.
If I may share my perspective of the veil, I guess, of time travel. So there may or may not be portals on this planet that were built thousands and thousands and maybe millions of years ago. And because of that portal or that doorway being there, they are able to triangulate the specifics of time travel in the past because of the system, the whole mechanization of the universe. The planet Earth is spinning, rotating, as it's also going around the sun, which the solar system is going around the universe. So every moment to the next, we are in an absolute different location. And in order to pinpoint the specifics of that location of the past can only occur by having a base structure or the portal to where that measurement has been made in the past. Going into the future is more difficult because there's so many outer circumstances happening in the universe that can have cause and effect of the fullness of the electromagnetic spectrum that future time travel is too difficult to predict, but past is. But also now, because of the may or may not development of technological advantage, they have come to the conclusion that within our genetic composition in our cell is also a measurement of the past, where there are entities, data collection, DNA collection, that have the ability to go within their own cellular composition to the past bloodlines of our mothers or fathers and experience the past, but not being able to manipulate it to the point of where they can override an individual of the past, because it would basically be like you would go into the past and you would be able to see, hear, taste, touch the experience of your ancestor. And so you can witness it, but you can't control the vehicle, your ancestor and stuff. So they're may or not be using this type of time travel, to hypothesize or come to another conclusion of where we are going in the future. Because again, the measurement of rule is knowing the future. So then you can manipulate the now to meet the future and make a greater profit. But that's my 0.087%.
So
Cents
okay,
worth.
wait, well, what if what could, because time is a lot of people consider time to be sort of a linear thing. You can go forwards in it and you can go backwards in it. But what if that concept is a veil so that we can just conceive the idea of time itself, but we don't quite have the I guess biometric ability to think beyond something that doesn't have more than four directions. So we're going to start out with time being only a two-directional thing, but it also has a now. Uh, and from wherever you are in the now, go forwards or you can go backwards. And I think that perhaps may be a veil that hopefully one day we will evolve to actually lift and learn something about time that doesn't necessarily follow this linear pattern of backwards and forwards. Because what if it can all exist at all the same time, like what
Well, you're
quantum physics
absolutely
is
right.
suggesting? And
You're
we just don't
absolutely
have
right,
the
Polly.
ability. It's not that we don't have the eyeballs, it's just that we don't have the mental capacity to understand that yet, because we haven't gone through certain things yet. Certain veils haven't been lifted yet. Those veils are there so that we can progress. They're there in a certain order, almost, I would suggest.
Well, that's
And so
where
in that way, I would say veils are a good thing.
I believe you're correct, Polly, and that is what makes us a multi-dimensional being, because we can be and access all those things once we know how.
Well, that's where the technological advancement is occurring because of the quickness of the algorithms or the programs. They're able to plot where we are at this moment, three-dimensionally, fourth-dimensionally, and having a better idea of plotting forward into the future. But it's easier to plot backwards because it has already happened in that linear aspect of the powers that should not be. Because there's a reason why they follow specific ancient calendars still.
Well, I believe that the veils are there to stop us from hurting ourselves. Like, we could really screw stuff up if we knew what like we could actually do with this stuff at this point in our evolution, I believe. So it's good that we don't know.
But that's what these scientists are doing. Have you ever heard of the red heifer?
No.
Yeah.
So in Hebrew religion, they talk about the apocalypse, the huge shit hitting the fan, excuse me, happening once a red heifer is born. So it's a heifer that has red. It's one solid color of red throughout its entirety. Every hair on its body is of this red. And now, for like the last 20 years, there are literally scientists that are of Hebrew descent that are genetically trying to create the red heifer.
Yep.
So like this apocalyptic event, this prophecy.
For what? Like, Hasenpfeffer?
Exactly.
What's the purpose of this, though? Like, because why do they want to bring it back?
They want to bring about the apocalypse. When somebody all
again?
Of a sudden, well, definition again, the unveiling apocalypse, the unveiling
exactly
apocalypse.
There's a veil right there. Oh my God, the apocalypse, a veil, like the unveiling, like there you go for veil.
But it's almost like the super crazy genius in the James Bond movies. You know, he's so disgusted with the world. He's like, I'm going to push the reset button, and it's for the
The
betterment
big
of
shiny
humanity.
red round reset button.
Yeah, right on the tip of your nose, like a clown. The
It's
red
like
ball,
it
the red
reminds me
bowl.
of, sorry, go ahead.
No,
I was just gonna say it reminds me of the old school NES console.
mm,
Like you couldn't like save your information or to restart. It was constant restart. That's us. We've just been gamed. They keep pressing the delete button to start over.
Did you say gamed? I so agree with you on that. I think we're continuing to be gamed right
level
now.
up, level up.
But
Oh, stupid shrooms.
it's difficult to figure out. Well, what is that? The only way to win the game is not to play the game. Like, remember that movie with Matthew Broderick, right? When they were talking about, do you want to play
Yeah,
thermonuclear war?
Want
war
The
to
only
games.
play
way to
a
win the
game?
game is to not to play the game, and that's kind of what it is with the new world, the new world puppers. Is you just have to keep backing out of the game, just
Ready
saying I'm
Player
not.
One.
Right, it's like I'm not going to wear the mask. I'm not going to take the test. I'm not going to do the job. You know, it's just constantly no thanks, no thanks, no thanks. And I think they're going to continue to ratchet up their demands while the rest of us are like, the more you ratchet, the more I'm going to say no.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
funny.
we're being gamed. It's fairly frustrating and annoying on some level and scary because you realize that everything you think, everything you do, you almost have to think it through spiritually, every single thing right now to make sure that you're staying within your either creator or I am or whatever, however you're referring to your spiritual path.
Every little thing she does is magic
So I got some
with a
questions.
K.
Listening to you all. One, is a portal where the veil is thin and someone's punched a hole in it, or it's just got a worn hole and it's made a portal? What was my other question? Oh, I wanted to tell
Do
you
you
Don't
something.
have
punch a
Luna?
hole in it.
Luna, do you have a feeling about that right now? I tried to think about that, and I don't think I came up with anything. Do you have a feeling about that?
Yeah, I see. I've actually seen portals. It's like you just punch a hole through the veil, and you can seal it up or keep it open.
So violent.
Yeah.
What if a portal can be created? Like I picture like that room you were talking about, Luna, with all
Yeah,
the like sort of like
with the
thin
veils.
veils
Yeah.
that made up the walls. But if you weren't alone in that room and you all got everybody to stand around in a certain way and blow on the wall,
It doesn't work like that up
you
there.
you do you know what I mean though? Like you would be able to move
I know.
you'd be able to move the wall. Like
Maybe.
and the more people you have, the more you'd be able to move the wall.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Like you
Mother,
could
should
do
I
that.
build the
I
wall?
don't think there's a necessary unless like once you're up there, it's a whole different ball game, Polly. We don't even, we have this.
No, but I was using that as an analogy
Yeah,
for
true.
what's happening down here.
Oh,
Like
right,
if you
right.
get enough people behind an idea, all sort of I guess proverbially blowing in the right direction or the
Yeah.
same direction, then maybe we can move some veils, a couple of feet here and there. And once we move them long enough, we can stake stakes in the ground to keep them
it
there
there.
so that we don't all have to keep blowing.
True.
In all my years of judging, I have never heard before anyone more deserving the full penalty of the law. Tear down the walls.
Well, what we're experiencing now is a truth veil being ripped down so everyone can see the truth, and it's becoming more and more and more. The whole world's looking, we can see the truth in the world as on a physical realm. We can call the bullshit. Everyone's seeing it, and each day that goes by, more and more people waking up and looking and going, oh, I can see through the veil now because of the veil, that area of the veil's been lifted. So I presume that other areas would be doing the same.
Hashtag big bada boom.
Yeah. And it gives me the thought that, is that what it's all about? Every so many 100 years or something, does the veil get lifted and everyone gets to see and goes, this is what it's really all about, and then bang, it gets put back down again. It makes me wonder.
Raise the curtain.
I'll tell you.
Well, yeah, it makes me wonder too, because you can raise the curtain halfway and still figure out what's on the other side of the curtain.
That's right.
So it's kind of only partially unveiled.
Yeah.
Who's that man hiding behind the curtain?
Hey, Renzo, welcome to Roundtable.
Hello.
We're discussing
This
what is the
Roundtable?
veil. Yes. We're discussing what is the veil. And we've had a good discussion. Okay, so we are quite aware that veils are lifting in this day and age, and that's all adding to the hype of everything happening.
Oh, you're punching through them.
We are. I want to tell you a story about someone that was close to me passed over, and we did the general burial stuff, and I said to Creator, who's going to come and take her over? And they went, you're going to walk her up to the veil. I'm like, what? And they went, you're walking her up to the veil. I'm like, what? I went off my head, and they're going, yep, it's your turn now. So I did. I walked her up to the veil, but what I didn't count on was she loved me that much. She was hanging on to my hand, and she pulled me, my arm up to my shoulder through the veil. And in my shoulder, where your chest meets your shoulder, I was really sick for like 2 weeks after that, because I kept saying, you got to let me go. I was in, my arm was on the other side for nearly half a minute, and I kept pulling her going, you got to let me go, you got to let me go. And she let me go, and I'm like, oh, shit. And yeah, I got really sick. I got like a bad chest thing just exactly where my arm was through the veil and on the other side. So lesson 1 is, while you're in a body, do not cross over. But that was just something I wanted
Unless
to share.
you have your GPS on.
Yeah, or unless you got your GPS on and the hazmat suit, man.
Well, you touched on something here, Luna, because this is one of the original questions I had when you guys were starting this conversation about what is the veil, and that sounds to me like a very specific veil.
Yeah, that's the one when people pass through when they die. That didn't look like a curtain, though. I got to tell you, that was more like a clear jelly film. It was like a clear jelly film, and as she went through it, it kind of opened up, and then as she pulled me through it, it closed in around my arm. I could still see through it, but it closed in around my arm, and I'm pulling her back, and it was on. I could feel it on the other side. I couldn't feel anything different, but I could see it. And I just knew that my arm shouldn't have been there. And it was like,
See, that sounds to me like it's like an actual physical veil.
well, it felt real.
Like something that can
that's
be
a different
touched.
one.
All clear jellies are brought to you by Schnozberry Jellies.
Flavours available.
Like strawberries.
Flavours available.
So Luna, was she scared? Is that why she wasn't
No.
letting go of your arm?
No, she was in a hurry to get to the other side. She just walked in there. I was holding her hand, she walked in there, but she kept walking and didn't let go of my hand, and she's holding me there, and I'm going, let go. And I'm trying to pull my arm back. She let go and I pulled it back, but it was in there for too long. If I had just done it really quick and let it go, it would have been all right, but it was there for half a minute. I could feel it. I've got to look at it better. Like I said, these aren't things I normally talk to people about. But the wall, veil, whatever is between here and there is real. And we can't go physically. Honestly, it makes you sick. It made me sick. And whether that's because it wasn't my time or whether we actually can't take our body to that side, I'm not sure.
I have a question. So y'all are talking about the veil. I kind of just jumped in, but have y'all ever thought about the electromagnetic spectrum and I guess the information that our bodies are physically picking up and perceiving versus the information that's out there that I guess you could say propagates at frequencies and wavelengths that our body doesn't pick up on.
Yeah. We said that before, the veil is a vibration, and that would, the way you said it was much better. But yeah, I think so too, Renzo. I think whatever vibration that world's on and this world, they're different, and maybe you have to get your physical body up to a real high singing vibration to take it over there, which would make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, fine-tune.
Tune it in.
It would make
But that's
sense.
what our bodies are. They're like antennas, very, 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 very fine-tuned and specific antennas for very specific information.
Yeah, I think so.
Or it's Magellan's.
So if you're a scientist and you had everything at your availability and you had
Evil
magnetic waves and all these funny fandangled machines, you could probably set it up to reveal that veil and have a look in there, scientifically speaking.
Well, you know what? There's some information I don't know if I would want to have unless I had like the physical ability to, or I thought of this. What if there's information that like could kill you?
Of course.
Yeah. Overload.
Don't eat too much of that red berry.
That's kind of what I was suggesting earlier with the whole time being linear, and that in itself is the veil, because our mind would just explode if we understood really what time is and how it works.
But did
So
you know
for now,
time?
we just get to go backwards and forwards, so we
Did
don't
you
kill
know-
it.
There's this thing called, or there's models of, quantum mechanics and stuff that talk about these things called, what are they? Advanced waves, which are waves of information that go from the future back into time. But they only manifest at, I guess you say, the quantum mechanical level. But all that really means is that there's not enough entropy for classical physics, which is what we experience, we perceive. There's just so much entropy that everything approximates to these classical laws that we see. And that's actually the underlying mechanism for time. So this is all very fresh in my mind. Yeah.
So
I was
entropy
just
is a
reading about
veil.
all that. Yes, well, kind of, I guess you could say. It's the second law of thermodynamics. It's a trigger word for me. I have the equation tattooed on me. Is it kind of like I had...
Quantum is speculation theory. It's still out there where it's not provable only by formula.
Well,
Quantum field theory? It's
you're
all
talking about-
speculation.
quantum field theory. I actually don't know too much about quantum field theory specifically, but I do know that the quantum mechanical model has held up to experiment consistently to this day. It's like famous for that. But there's just like 5 postulates that underlie it. Pretty much, it's like using that as a model to describe a model that these experiments that we, come up with to, maybe falsify. Once it's falsified, once the experiments don't or suggest that the model isn't valid, the model breaks down. But to this day, we have yet to come up with an experiment that falsifies, excuse me, my brain is getting all mushy, that we have yet to this day to come up with an experiment that falsifies quantum mechanics as a model for physical reality.
But they
However,
all have. Because when the formula of the experience is brought forth, then different agencies will test the theory, whether they'll test it 100 times 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times will vary upon the funding that is given to test the theory.
Mhm.
But still, the measurement is different. Whether it's like, oh, we only did the test 100 times, and it was conclusive 100 times, but so and so did the test 1,000 times, and on 1,001, the formula did not work. But we'll take 1,000 as enough testing to say it's solidified or validated.
Well, people all the time are, I mean, if you could come up with an experiment that could falsify quantum mechanics, you would get a Nobel Prize at least out of that. So there's people, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of incentive. And I mean, you just all you got to do is go do some, I read paper, there's tons and tons of published stuff. It's not, I mean, most of the stuff is, well, they'll try and charge you for it if you go to the wrong website. Don't ever purchase a research article. It's criminal that they even charge for that in the first place. They ought to be ashamed of themselves. But there's always a way to find the free PDF. But
I think that maybe quantum mechanics might be one of those veils, or at least it was behind a veil that has been currently lifted. But
yeah,
beyond quantum mechanics are like probably an infinite number of other veils that quantum mechanics won't even begin to even explain.
yeah, kind of, I guess, how that's kind of what happened with classical physics. Classical
Quantum
physics.
mechanics is, sorry, go ahead,
Oh,
Ramsey.
I was just going to say quantum or classical mechanics isn't invalid necessarily. It's just it didn't explain certain things like black body radiation. So yeah, there's probably, I don't know exactly. I'm sure there's already examples out there.
Well,
That,
classical mechanics got us ready for quantum mechanics, if you look at it.
Well, quantum mechanics is the repackaging of atomism, the theory of bumping particles. Like there's little microscopic BBs that are just, falling out of your light socket and piling up. You just don't see them. Because through your light electrical socket, you got positive and negative, and once the loop is closed, then the energy flows. They still don't know how the hell and why the hell it happens. They still have not given a scientific, valid reason why magnets work the way they work. They can describe how it works, but they can't.
Brian's famous for that.
So when we pass
describing why or how, but not, or excuse me, I'm so sorry.
That's all right. I'm just wondering, do you think the veils are just magnetic energy?
Oh, absolutely.
No, it could be more to it than just electromagnetism, which is just light.
More than others.
Actually, it's very important to realize. I didn't realize this until a few years ago. Electromagnetic radiation, all that is light. Radio signals, all that is light, but we just don't see it.
Field.
I wonder if the veil is a lot like magnetic resonance of linen. Like there's a magnetic resonance in linen and another kind in wool.
Yeah, static.
Right? So yeah, that's
Static
exactly. And then there's
light.
I mean, when I've seen the veils, there are different types, different levels, different places where veils are. That final veil that Luna was talking about, I've never crossed over that one. That one is like the final veil. You go over, you're done. You're in that place. You don't come back from there. I never saw anybody come back from that one. But there's linen. Many places, especially the waiting area, those are linen with golden writing, thread embroidery on them. And there's different areas and spaces of rooms within the place, waiting area type thing.
Does anybody know? Does anybody know what it's called? There's a specific spectrum of photography that you can take of an individual, and it's multi-level of the visual spectrum. I can't remember what it's called, but I remember seeing a picture where they took a large oak leaf and they took a picture of the oak leaf in its fullness. And then they took a knife and cut the leaf in half and took a picture of it again. But in this field, this specialized visual field, the leaf was still together whole.
Do they call that Curleon photography or something like that?
Yes, yes. Thank you. Thank you. And so they say that taking a picture of an individual, even if they're like missing an arm or a leg or a limb, their body in this field shows the entirety of the whole. And it kind of goes a little bit on the holographic universe. That within some field, some measurable watt, WATT, which is a measurement, whether you want to look at it from what perspective, a hertz, a megahertz, HF, there's different measurements of those fields, but our entirety has a veil of itself, which is like your skin. And through that photography, they can see parts of your body where you have scar tissue. And allegedly, there's a measurement of an energy that is being released, whether it's weeping out of your scars or if you have an open wound. And also, supposedly, from your bottom chakra, your taint, up through your crown chakra, they can show this electromagnetic field circulating around you just like a torus.
You know what?
Or a donut.
I wonder what. Okay, I wonder if that is like the light, I feel like, for lack of a better word. So, light, electromagnetic radiation, same thing. That I feel like is radiating from living people versus dead bodies.
Yes. You can see the light.
Yeah. I wonder what wavelength / frequency those are at. Because they're units. Units are another thing for me. So frequency, that's 1/time. And we got wavelength, which would be length. And light in a vacuum propagates at 3 times 8, or 3 times 10 to the 8th meters per second. So length over time. 1 length unit over 1 time unit. And we are assigning our units meters over seconds. And what was my main point? Oh, I wonder, I don't know, I just get a kick out of it. I wonder I remember what I was going to say. So the wavelength of the electromagnetic radiation that you're emitting is going to be related to the frequency of that. And this is just for all electromagnetic radiation by a factor of the speed of light, which is 3 times 10 to the 8th meters per second.
Well, there's individuals that profess or proclaim that they can see other people's chakras. And they'll say how they'll witness a hue of color around individuals. And some will claim it also has to do with their feelings, their emotional state. But then there's some that claim about an individual's darkness or negativity comparatively to light and positivity.
And they can just see it with their own eyes, or are they using some other?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if there's someone in the room right now that can see chakras.
No, I wouldn't surprise me either. I have a question. So, and this is just because kind of go with my obsession over that seed of life little symbol thing that shows up everywhere. Or the tree of life thing, the Sephiroth. Are those the same things? Are those the same things as the chakras that you're talking about? Do you know what I'm talking about? That's first important.
Well, the one that looks like a cross, I can't remember what that one's called. That
I
one
know you
has
know what I'm
more
talking
correlation with the chakras, whereas the circle of life. Some people call it the seat of life, the circle of life. Where it's a bunch of intricate circles within circles, and they have a measurement within them which goes to the Platonic scale and into frequency levels. But
Oh, I
then
love that stuff.
that again goes with that whole ability of seeing through the veil, where I would believe that every individual has the ability to see through the veils, but sometimes people make that choice not to because of that safety conditioning. Is my parent still holding that bike? Are they still running behind me? Do I have that feeling of safety still?
They want their
'Cause people,
security blanket. Their security blanket that veils them from the veil or getting past the veil. I don't know. I was trying to be funny. Anyway. Did I just?
Oh, that's been amazing. The chat and like the chatting and that's going on screen. Fantastic.
Well, we come to the point where we're going to round up our roundtable conversation. I'd just all like you to, at your own time, sum up our discussion. Even though, Renzo, you jumped in at the end, if you listen to the others, they might fill you in a little bit. So whoever wants to go first in their summary of what is the veil. Everyone jumps in at once and mutes up on me.
This was fantastic. I definitely learned some things. And I had an affirmation of things. But to answer your question, you just asked, what is the veil? The veil right now is this computer screen I'm sitting behind, because if it was an actual, real, virtual roundtable, you would all be getting a hug right now.
Oh, thank you, Jules. Hug back to you too, sister.
I love that, Jules.
Definitely.
I think that's awesome. That's a great explanation, and I think two things. I think it's moving. All of the veils and whatever you want to call them are moving. They're constantly moving right now, and I think we're breaking through the ones we need to, and learning as we go. Because I think this is an excellent time of learning. Certainly an opportunity time of learning. That's all I got to say. But so thank you for putting this on. It was great.
Thank you, Sharon.
Yeah, I can totally agree there, Sharon. Thank you. For sure. Like, oh, what a pleasure to have you here every time. Like, I'm like, yay, Nano Girl's here. I'm such a nerd, though. I've been listening to you for so long. It's exciting to me. But
Thank you. It's
yeah,
you guys are
for
keeping
real.
me sane right now, and I just want to say blessings to all of you. I'm not kidding. I think about the conversations during the week, and you got me through all of last week with the conversation we had, patience versus tolerance, and also I think my favorite show and the hardest one was Love. And again, thank you for that one, because that also was such a gift to me. So thank you everyone for being willing to share and put things out there and help us all walk through this together. So thank you.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you. Seriously, wow. But I wanted to jump off of what Donnie was typing in the chat really quick, because it's just wow. And that's like, it's a closer, but it's also a beginner. It's a jumper into whatever we want to talk about next. But the 7 veils, what I found is, like what he's saying, there's 3 levels of, like, 3 branches of 7 veils in each branch, or location, each place. And then I also see this mirror effect. So it actually makes a total of 7 branches, like the menorah. And then there are another, it comes to a fullness of 50 veils. And these, in order to cross through into the next veil or the next area in the spiritual realm, it's like in ascension into going into a different room or into a different area. I'm talking about in the spiritual realm, where the place where you can go in your mind that brings to life the what we would call imaginative realm of being. Though in the mind is, I hate that word imagination because it's not true. It's not machinations. It's not something that you're just coming up with. What happens in the mind is very real. And if we're able to come into the understanding, I believe, of making that spiritual connection, that we can ascend, that we can go into the spiritual realm, and it was meant for us to do this thing, but it was taken from us, or that we were, it was forgotten, how, or this kind of thing, because as I find in traversing myself in spiritual realms, it's a place of openness. The good spirits in there are super abundant compared to the malevolent, or what we would call evil spirits, which they're there too. So you have to be aware of that. But as far as veils like that, I think that was great as a closer for Donnie and for me too, to help solidify that there is so much order in this place. It's not a wispy, waspy kind of like go over here, go over there, wandering kind of thing, though many spirits get lost in wandering in that place. But it has a very specific order, like the spiral pattern, like the sequence of life, like the cycle of time. It goes around and it's growing in each phase. So in order to grow into the next spiritual phase or walk forward, we have to completely understand the lesson we learned in the past 7 days to move forward into the next 7 days, into the next week that we're walking forward into. And if we understand time a little bit more in that way and keep it more simple into 7s times 7s times 7s, then everything opens up. As far as everything, meaning the concept of growth and circular and time and space and being able to move it. I think that's why the calendar was removed from us to, like I said, at the Council of Nicaea, unable for us to really understand what the real days and times and signs and seasons really are. But it is in its essence very simple, and it is contained in those 7s. So it works together with veils and everything else, the perfect number 7s. But that's just to sum it up. Like I said, it's kind of a beginning, but an ending as well. I think that would be a great topic to talk into if we wanted to, but don't have to. I know Jules has talked about Council of Nicaea a few times before too. But yeah, I really enjoy this. I wanted to agree with Sharon also that having this week, having my little file folder reminder of Patience is a Virtue, which is what I titled it in order to load it. And just every time I opened my file folders, there it was, patience. And it was such an amazing reminder all week long to have the patience to get through this last week, which was just, whoa. Like all of you guys have talked about. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for letting me have a voice and others have a voice in this place. I think it's very important.
Thank you, Malia. What about you, Nace? You got anything to say before we go?
The veils shall come and the veils shall go, but through them would it be in our best interest? That's for you to decide. But I'll be here on the side of the light, pulling you back if you need it.
Thank you, Nace. And Donnie, we haven't heard nothing from you today. Is there anything you want to say before we go, bro? No, he's typing it.
He's been typing his little fingers to the
I
bone
know.
today.
I know, because
Can
It's
I
been great.
thank everybody for unveiling veils I didn't know existed?
Oh, same. I think that's a good one, Polly. Yeah, thank you for unveiling the veils. And Donnie said
Always
he
a great
typed it.
time here. I love these roundtables, and I especially the corner seats like really comfortable, so I like it there too.
Yeah, and I sent you a picture of the corner seat we had specially made for you.
Thank you.
That's okay. And on that note, we'll go. I want to thank everyone for contributing to this discussion, and I want to thank you all for listening now and in the future. Love to you on this day, and yeah, as usual, I'm wordless at the end of these. They're getting better and better and better. So that's all I got to say. Yaloo, yaloo, everybody.
Hello.
Yaloo.